what's the difference between guardianship and supported decision making. And then we're going to have some action steps for everybody. So here's our agenda. And like I said, a huge piece of this is going to be focusing on why we need alternatives, kind of what the experience is of people who are under guardianship, and then kind of how we can all, as a profession and as, you know, advocates, group together to help push some alternatives forward. So first off, I want to just talk about the power of decision making. So I want everyone to do a little reflection right now. It's 10 o'clock. So we've been up for a couple hours at this point, and I want you to really think about all of the decisions that you've made this morning up to this point. What time did you decide to get out of bed? What time did your alarm clock go off versus what time did you get out of bed? How long did you spend laying there contemplating what you were going to do for the day? What was the first thing that you decided to do when you got out of bed? What did you feel like was most important? And then all throughout the morning, what decisions were involved? When you had breakfast, did you have toast? Did you have cereal? Did you have a quick coffee? Did you have leftover pizza from last night? Those are all decisions that we made this morning, down to our clothes. What decisions came when it came to picking out your clothes? And what decisions came before that to put all those clothes in your closet? They're probably something that you picked out yourself, if they weren't a gift from someone. So these clothes that we wear, they say something about our style or how we want to be seen in the world. Maybe your outfit was influenced by the fact that you're going to be on camera today, or what you planned for the day. You're going to be in a Zoom session, so maybe you wanted to be comfortable, what impression you wanted to make on your colleagues, and how you were feeling this morning when you woke up. So if we stop and think about even a very small portion of our lives, a 3-hour period, we see that it's a constant stream of decision making. We're constantly choosing how we want to guide our life day to day, hour to hour. And we own our lives because of the decisions that we get to make. So now I want you to think back to this morning, like we were just doing, and imagine that you woke up in a room that you did not choose as your bedroom, in a home that you didn't choose to be your home. You were woken up by someone who decided that that was a convenient time for you to get up. You didn't have the option of laying there and kind of pushing the snooze button over and over and deciding when you were going to get up. Your breakfast options were chosen by someone else, and quite possibly something that you eat every single morning for breakfast that you may not even really like. Someone else chose what you were going to wear for the day. Someone else decided when and even if you were going to leave your house that day, where you were going to go and what you would do when you got there. You hear people talking around you on your behalf like you aren't even there. You have people telling other people what you like and what you don't like. They're communicating your wishes and your choices, but you want to choose something else, but nobody is listening. Nobody even asks what you would like to choose. Through decision making, we experience freedom, self-discovery. We're able to experience a full range of our abilities and our limitations. We're able to shape who we are and what really matters to us. We have the power to express ourselves in whatever way we want, define our lives, and make our mark on the way. And that's where there's a bit of a difference between guardianship and supported decision making. Guardianship is a legal proceeding in which someone, usually a family member, but it could be a public guardian, asks the court to find that a person is unable to manage their affairs effectively because they have a disability. So a guardian is stepping into the shoes of the person with a disability and making those decisions for them. Now, I will say that not all guardianship situations are like this. There are situations where guardians try very actively to give people decisions, but the power over someone gives you the ability to make all the decisions, down to what they were eating, when they got out of bed, what they wore that day. But the statute of guardianship for incapacitated persons requires that the court finds the least restrictive alternative, meaning the form of assistance that least interferes with the legal capacity of that person to act on their own behalf. And in Arkansas right now, guardianship is considered the least restrictive alternative, which we'll get to that later on. So this is where I want to bring up what supported decision-making is. Supported decision-making is a tool that allows people with disabilities to retain that decision-making capacity by picking different people in their lives who they trust and who they genuinely like the advice that they give them to help them make the decisions that they want to make. So a person using a supported decision-making contract would select people, friends, family members, professionals that work with them that want to help them understand, consider, and communicate those decisions. And so the person with the disability gets the tools to make their own informed decisions. So with this comes a lot of anxieties from people. What will happen if we let someone make their own decisions? And with that, we really have to look at the power of decision making and what our rights are. So let's take a time when someone had to make a decision. Maybe it was someone that you supported, maybe it was a friend or a family member. So let's just say someone got a new job offer, or maybe they got into a new relationship. Maybe they were looking at a new house to buy. And instantly we feel like we have an opinion on what they should do. We feel like, oh my gosh, that's the perfect job for you, or that's going to be a really not good job for you. I definitely don't think you would do good in that environment. Or I think that's a lovely house, or that house is not really suitable for you. We have opinions about other people's decisions. And sometimes we can storm in and give those unsolicited opinions without people even asking for our support. Let's try to take a time to think of our own lives and a time that we were having to make a really hard decision. Maybe it was about a relationship and people said something like, you need to break up with them. They are no good for you. That's toxic. You need to divorce them. Maybe it was about taking time off of work when your kids were little. You need to take the time off. You need to stay home with them. Or maybe it was because you didn't take time off and people were like, oh, you need to get back to work, or you need to stay home. You know, you're a working mom, your kids need you. There's all opinions around all the decisions that we make. Decisions are not black and white. So what might be a right decision for you doesn't make it the right decision for somebody else. And this is a really, really, really crucial part of understanding supported decision making and why guardianship is so restrictive. Because even in situations where we feel like someone's not going to make the right decision, it's still their decision to make. It's still their right to make that decision. Just like we're allowed to make poor decisions. We're allowed to run up credit card bills. We're allowed to, spend our money on silly things. We're allowed to eat out 7 days a week if we want, knowing that it's not great for our health. Those are our decisions to make. And so that comes with the dignity of risk. And the dignity of risk is something that I teach people a lot. We have the right to make choices that are going to have risks involved. And almost all of the big choices that we make involve some sort of risk. Going back to college, starting a relationship, pursuing a career, or just speaking our truth. There are risks involved with all of those choices. It's challenging to support someone who's making a decision that involves risk, particularly if we view those individuals as fragile, vulnerable, or prone to injury. Then it makes us a lot more likely to want to step in and protect that person, keep them from making a decision that's not good for them. It's a human instinct to avoid risk, but it's not always in the best interest of the person that we're supporting. You may have strong opinions about a decision that someone is going to make. So I want to encourage you guys to stop and ask yourself, has this person asked me to help them make this decision? That's a simple yes or no question. Have they asked for my opinion and my advice, or me to step in and help them make this decision? I think that question in and of itself is oftentimes, like 80% of the time, a no. We give a whole lot of unsolicited advice to people that we support. Me, myself as well. It's a constant self-reflection of not stepping in and putting your ideas or your opinions in place and letting someone else make their decisions. So if they did ask you for support, what kind of support are they asking for? Were they giving you an open invitation to just storm in and tell them what they should do? Most of the time, that's no. When we ask someone for help making a decision, we want them to help us look at the options, to hear our perspective, not to just storm in and tell us what to do. So this is where supporters can really help people by doing something called interested inquiry. So this is helping someone come to a decision without putting your own opinions out there. So tell me about the decision that you're having to make. Maybe it is someone wants to get a job. So tell me about your options. Where are you looking at? Which way are you leaning? What feels good to you? What are the pros and cons of these situations? Helping them look at what's the good, bad, and ugly of all these choices. Maybe you're really watching them and reflecting how they're acting. So you look really, really happy when you talk about working, at the animal shelter. You look a little bit worried when you start talking about working at Sonic. I wonder if you're feeling that way. I wonder if you're feeling like one may be a better fit for you. And really helping people look at why they want to make the decisions that they're making. Support is about opening a conversation and stepping back so the decision maker can think out loud. So supported decision making involves making a contract with those supporters that I talked about. So the first step of that is determining areas of needed support. I'm always going from strengths based. So I usually start consultations like, what are you great at? What can you do completely independently? What are people underestimating you with? What can you do without that much support? And then helping people look at, okay, where are those areas that you need a little bit more support? Maybe it's money management. I hear this a lot from guardians that, if we gave them the ability to run their bank account, they'd just run it dry. They would spend all their money on bean burritos. Well, there are many people who would do that. That's why we have a whole bunch of supports already that exist. There's financial counseling. There are representative payees for SSI recipients. There's mobile banking and banking apps. There's overdraft charges or an overdraft protection. There's all these things already put in place in our society that help people who have trouble managing their money. There's also financial power of attorney. Healthcare. So a lot of people I've heard a lot from parents, especially who are going through maybe the special education system, who have been kind of feared into taking guardianship of their kid because of, what if your kid was on life support, or what if your kid needed to make this massive, massive medical decision? What would you do? Well, that's a huge if, and that's a whole bunch of protection for one concern, right? So we have medical power of attorney, we have healthcare proxies, we have professional healthcare workers who can give good advice. I usually don't ask my mom for healthcare advice anyways. I usually ask my doctor. There are living wills. There are tons of different support systems in place to help people make healthcare decisions. And with a supported decision-making contract, this person can identify who they feel is best equipped to help them make medical decisions, because maybe the person who's going to give them financial advice and the person that's going to give them medical advice are two different people. It doesn't necessarily need to be a catch-all person that's a know-all for all these decisions. For community living, if people are worried about people being able to be independent, there's supported living services, assisted technology that are having huge innovations right now that are really allowing people to flex their independence. Tons of community resources. When it comes to employment, there's job coaching, vocational rehabilitation, tons of supports in place. So you identify what the person is really needing. Instead of just saying this person can't make decisions, what do they really need help making decisions in? And then identifying who they want to support them for those choices. So to help me with my choices, my supporters may help me find out more about the choices, help me understand my choices so that I can make a decision for myself, help me tell other people about my decision that I've wanted to make, giving that communication support. But your supporters are not allowed to make decisions for you. They're there to support you. And so a contract may look like, when it comes to sex, relationships, birth control, I want my sister to help me with that. I don't want mom coming in and helping me with all of my sexual health decisions. I want my sister to do that. But mom would be a great help for medical decisions, and then dad for financial decisions. And then when it comes to, community living, I actually want my manager from my supported living team because they've been really influential in helping me. So you see how you can really pick different people to help you in different areas. And that really helps with accountability. So not one person has all the control. This team keeps each other accountable of making sure that they're centering the person who makes those decisions. And so the last step is building a contract. Like I said, Arkansas does not formally recognize supported decision-making as an alternative to guardianship. There was legislation that came up recently that did not pass, which is where I'm really encouraging you guys to do more research into supported decision-making, figure out how you can help families learn more about it and how we can advocate for this to become a legally recognized alternative. That doesn't mean that you can't make a supported decision-making contract. You can still make one, but if you are trying to fight the court system in guardianship, then it's not going to stand in the same kind of way right now. We have people who their parents took guardianship of them when they were 18. Their parents are willing to relinquish that guardianship if they know that there are different supports in place. And so we've been consulting with several different people who are identifying who they want to be their supporters, usually including that guardian that was already helping them make decisions, but really spreading out who supports them. It's a simple contract that you fill out and it gets notarized. And then it's also a living contract. So if that person decides that, you know what, there's been strife in that relationship, I don't really think that that person's the best support for me anymore. All they have to do is go in, mark it out, initial it. They can put someone else there, but it's constantly can be adapted to whatever their choices are that are changing. It doesn't have to go back through the court system in order to have a different supporter. I did put some different places on here that have really great information about supported decision-making. Disability Rights Texas has some really great contracts, and the District of Columbia has really, really good readability, really simple context guide to really walk parents and individuals and family and all of that through supported decision-making. Okay, now I have some time for questions. I wanted to leave quite a bit of time because I know that this is a topic that has a lot of emotion behind it. It's a very big decision for people to make. And also, since it hasn't been recognized in Arkansas yet as a legal alternative, there's a whole bunch of confusion around how to even get started. So I want to give you guys the chance to ask questions, give your opinions on it, how you feel, if you've heard about this before, and any experience you have. I'm willing to chat through all of that.
I have a question. What's the efficacy of it like compared to guardianship? Like how much better does that work than that? And I know, believe me, I come from a broken home, drug addicts and all that, so I know that there are problems, but like at some point that kids gonna have to learn that they got to do it on their own, whether they're 15 or 38. So how do you back it up with science so that you can get the support that you need legislatively?
That is a great question. I think that one of the best ways to take it to legislation is that we are not eradicating guardianship. We're not trying to do away with guardianship. That
Giving
is,
more options
yes,
because
more
there
options.
are broken homes where mom and dad is a crackhead, and yeah, I got you. I've been there,
Yeah,
so I want to fight for this. So that's the reason why I was asking.
awesome.
Let's start somewhere.
Yeah. And, it can look like family situations. It can also, a lot of experience that I've had with people is with public guardians that they have a lot of trouble with, because that public guardian may only see them once every couple months, doesn't really keep in touch with them unless there's an incident report that comes through that that person messed up in some way. And then there's an incident report, and that guardian only has that. The next time they talk to them, it's like, well, you didn't take your meds that one night. So how do I know
Yeah,
that you're going to,
it's always the patient's fault, never the guardian. And that's even if you go, let's say, inpatient, like last week or something. I don't know what, but but no, seriously, I don't I don't know how to voice this yet, but by the end of the conversation, I'll get it out. Like it's you just open my eyes to a whole nother like thing that I want to advocate for. It's crazy that Texas has one of the best, and we're Arkansas, and I've lived in Texas. Nothing bad about it, but like their attitudes are bigger. You know what I'm saying?
yes, everything's bigger.
I'm shutting up now, guys. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that. I'm really glad that this is something that interests you and sparks your passion. It is for me as well.
Lindsey, is there anything that an individual outside of the guardianship process can do? For instance, working with our youth with disabilities or even our adults with disabilities, and we are learning of a family who is working to get guardianship over a student or over a client. But your professional opinion, as you're looking at the full situation and you're looking at what's going on, you don't feel that that person's going to be the best guardian. Is there any way that we can advocate for our clients to the courts to have a state appointed guardian or something, or somebody other than who's seeking the guardianship, if we don't feel that it's the best person and they have the best interest for our clients in mind?
I would say that starting off, and I don't know if you're able to send out some resources after this if I
Yeah,
send them to
absolutely.
you.
Yes.
But I've collected, a supported decision-making assessment that goes through multiple different areas of someone's life and really lets people look at, okay, this person's doing this completely independently. This area does not even need support. So that might be a good option. Is the individual, would there be any opportunity to convince the court that they could be their own guardian?
I believe so. He was working, he had a job, the employer was offering him an apartment, was going to be assisting with some of the billing, where he had a representative payee, but he was living very independently. Then later on, a family came along and said, no, he doesn't need to be there. They got him on Social Security, and now he's no longer working. He has ran away from their home numerous times. And that family's seeking guardianship on him. And I know with just working with this family for the last 4 years, it's one of those things where their current situation isn't the best situation. It isn't the worst. It's definitely better than where they were prior to it. But just knowing that if he had a state appointed guardian to be able to represent and advocate for what he's wanting, as opposed to, I feel that the individuals that are seeking guardianship now are going to be very much restraining him from reaching his potential because they're wanting his check. And I'm really disheartening.
Can I ask CASA, like the court appointed people, would they be able to help him?
Court appointed, what does that stand for?
CASA? I don't know. Let me look it up real quick.
So my advice, Christina, would be, I'll send you guys some resources. I'm actually dealing with a situation right now where a trust is wanting to appoint a guardian over someone who's very, very independent, but has trouble with financial decisions. And so what we're doing is doing the assessment, really highlighting that finance is the really only part that he needs assistance in. And then backing that up with, we're doing a contract with him. He's identified that we're the representative payee. Has different managers and family members who are going to help with different aspects, getting that notarized. And then we're going to present that to the court during the hearing. This hasn't happened yet, so I don't know how the court is going to respond. And it's always kind of, I don't think that we ever know for sure what the response of the court is going to be, but I think that that will give him a really great chance at maybe being able to keep his guardianship, showing that you guys are representative payee. And if you're able to show any kind of, like we're going to be presenting documentation that he's been living independently, what kind of jobs he's had, what kind of decisions he's made. And when it comes to kiddos who are under 18 and they're about to get into that, level where people are going to start advocating for their guardianship, one thing that we've really wanted to start implementing in our children's programs is using supported decision making really early on when people are children, and the process of it and documenting it. Instead of saying, Susie, here's your outfit, which we often do, here's your breakfast, here's this, really starting to give kids decisions, teenagers decisions, and documenting that. This person makes decisions on what they're going to wear, what they're going to eat, what they're going to do that day. And I think that those smaller decisions oftentimes are overlooked when we look at the really, really big decisions. However, those really, really big decisions happen way less often than all of the other decisions that make up our life.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Lindsey, can I add something?
Mm-hmm.
I really like the idea of the supported decision making, because I used to be a single parent, and making decisions for your children on everything can be very overwhelming. So when you have the option of having these different supports, you're actually getting different ideas, and all of it's not being put down on just one individual to make all those decisions for the individual. And I think it's a great idea, because I think they'll be giving more of a vast different choices that they have.
Tanisha said it was court appointed.
Special advocates.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know much about that. I know we've done a little bit of work with Disability Rights Arkansas. I've reached out to a legal advocate there, and they've given a little bit of advice. One part of the advice that they gave me was, in order to take someone's guardianship, then they'll have to present a medical, necessity letter from a medical doctor saying that this person's incapable of making their own decisions. And so when we are in the process of trying to get people's guardianship back, this legal advocate has recommended that we go get new letters from the doctor, do new, adaptive assessments and IQ testing, and try to show that the same kind of evidence that was shown in the first court, right? So like in the first court, they were trying to prove that that person wasn't capable. And we need the doctor to say, this person has been making lots of decisions for themselves over the years, X, Y, and Z. We did these kinds of assessments. They make their healthcare decisions. I think that they can make their own. And unfortunately, that medical doctor piece is a huge help in lots of areas. And so I really also try to encourage the people we support to build good relationships with their doctors, build good relationships with that public guardian that we're trying to convince to relinquish the guardianship back to them, because it does take a lot of convincing. I won't be naive about that.
I had another question, if you don't mind. If an individual had a psychiatric advance directives prior to guardianship, and then the guardianship came in play, would those still remain in place? Or would it just be a matter of the guardian going back and reviewing the psychiatric advance directives, and would they be able to change those at all?
The guardian would be able to, yeah.
Okay.
Why doesn't the patient have more say in where they want to go? That's what gets me, because never mind.
No, absolutely.
Like,
I absolutely agree.
if they're old enough to work, if they're old enough to take care of themselves, if they're old enough to even realize that, hey, this isn't a good environment, they need to be able to take into somewhere. And there's not a lot of open places right now because of a lot of different things. It's not the world we grew up in, but I feel like even when I go to the doctor, I have to fight to tell the doctor, hey, this is what's wrong, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I got all the medicine, but it's just a constant struggle. It's like patients have rights, but we really don't. Like, once we say something out of frustration, then that gets turned in and flipped out because, well, we don't want this to happen because there's that red tape. Red tape shouldn't matter. It's the people's lives that should matter.
Mhm. Absolutely. And part of supported decision making as well is, having someone be an advocate for you in healthcare settings, not making those decisions, but you telling them the decisions that you've made and them helping advocate against the doctor. Like, look, this is what they've chose, right? It's their decision. That's what they've chose. Let's move on from it. And sometimes, unfortunately, that kind of hype man in the background can help way more than a guardian who might just, first of all, make their own decisions. Guardianships oftentimes, especially if it's a public guardian, there's not going to be a whole lot of second guessing or investigating. I hear a lot of like, well, if the doctor said that, then that's what the doctor said. Well, a lot of us go get second opinions, and a lot of us go see a different doctor if we're having some concern that's not being addressed. And so just having that ability to really control our lives on a deeper level, because a lot of times if you're disconnected from someone's life, you don't have the ability to really deal with all the intricacies of decision making.
Miranda has her hand up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add that I definitely feel that supported decision making, especially starting at a young age, would help in so many areas, self-worth, confidence, anxiety, But I did, I don't know if this is adding on to what Topher was asking in the beginning, but do you have specific, I know there was a page on the slides that you said were great resources, but specific case studies or well, I guess specific case studies that we could look into more to further our, research.
Yeah, I don't have specific case studies. My boss, Sarah, has told me that she doesn't think there's a supported decision-making contract established in Arkansas. Outside of Arkansas, there are, but in Arkansas, no. So that's really where I've been looking for an example to try to get who's got this to really go through the court and how did you do it? How did you really push it through? It looks like we're the pioneers of that. And so that's okay. We're going to keep going. But there are tons of resources around what it is, how it works, what contracts look like, assessments. I have like a support triangle that shows, if you're concerned about community, here's all the different resources that they can use in the community. If you're concerned about healthcare, here's all the different, supports they can use for healthcare. I've gathered a whole bunch of different resources to try to build out something for ASN. And so I'm definitely willing to share those with you all after I get off here, emailing them out, and you guys can send them out if you'd like.
Miss Lindsey, I'd also like to say that having all that stuff happen when you're a kid makes it a lot harder when you're an adult to do the things like you need to do, like pay your bills on time. Like, I ain't never had that problem because I want my lights and my computers. That's because I'm fancy. But like my family, my stepbrothers, like it got so bad they went in and out of prison systems. Like, that's how I knew about Costa, because when I was 15 and living in Heber, he had to go stay with a police lady.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like my Miss Miranda said, like, if it could get that system built when they're kids, like that's how we have a better future for the people that are going to be running our future. Like,
right. And one thing that I highlight a lot is that, we protect kids, especially kids with disabilities. We build a protective bubble around them in order to try to keep them safe, keep them, protect them. And what we're actually doing is the moment they turn 18, they're going to get into the real world no matter what. The real world does not care. And you're going to have to make decisions. You're not going to have that bubble around you. And so a lot of times people are not able to make decisions because they were never taught about the decisions that they were going to have to make. While we were learning about sex education and money and all of that, they were quite possibly in a room playing with colored blocks, And so it goes so much beyond just post 18 years old. It's really how we're
bio,
helping kids.
psychosocial, all that.
For sure.
In the chat, Miss Judy Smith wanted all of us to be reminded that when we suspect that there's been any kind of abuse or neglect, that it is very important to report it to Adult Protective Services, and that includes for our students and individuals who have disabilities. And then PW says, tips on working with the doctor. Coming into the middle of the clinic on a busy day and expecting the doctor to generate a letter of guardianship or medical advocacy or whatever paperwork is really stressful for the doctor. Most primary care doctors do not care, but may be in a hurry if the clinic is full. I recommend that if people need to talk to the doctor about something beyond the usual 10-minute visit, tell the receptionist when they make the appointment that they need a longer appointment so it can be scheduled. Or maybe it can be put at a time where the doctor is less distracted by others who are waiting. So absolutely, I definitely agree with that one. I have had to go in, and I think every single one of us at some point in time has had to get a letter from our doctors, and they'll write you anything if you request it, and it isn't always as accurate as we'd hope it to be. So great advice.
Yeah, and bringing up these conversations before, like as you're talking to your doctor, when kids are younger, especially if you're working with kiddos, having the families really bring this up to the doctors at a young age, that this is something that we really want when they turn 18. We really want them to be able to make their own decisions. We don't want to take guardianship. And so, what kind of assessments do we need to look at getting? Because sometimes it is an assessment that the doctor can't provide. Maybe it's a psychiatrist that needs to do an assessment. And so really just working and partnering with your doctor, this is kind of our wishes. Can we work to get there, instead of going in and saying, hey, I'm going to try to get my guardianship back. Can you please write a letter that says that I can have it? Because I have people that do that, and it really does. It takes doctors off guard. So it's nice to really build that relationship first.
Miranda had another question. She's asked if you can elaborate a little bit more about what it looks like if someone had a guardian and also wanted to have an SDM contract. I would assume a caring guardian would like to implement the SDM contract, but what if the guardian does not want any part of it?
Okay, well, there has been a couple different situations that I can kind of expand on. I've had guardians say, I think that it's great, but not for my kid. I think it sounds great, sounds like a really great alternative, but not for my kid. They don't make any decisions. And so a lot of what my role is really gently helping that parent look at what that looks like, right? So you're saying they don't make decisions. What does a day look like for them? What do they do when they get up? Do they choose what they have for breakfast? Do they choose what they're going to wear? Do they make choices on the friends that they're going to have? And really, unfortunately, the guardian has to buy in right now in order to relinquish the guardianship. And so a huge part of what I have come up against with all the cases is it takes a lot of time and advocacy with those guardians, and a lot of gentle advocacy, understanding that most of the time they're not coming from a place of wanting to control someone. They're coming from a place of genuine fear that's been incited in them since that individual was very young about what could happen if they didn't take their guardianship. And so it is very, very, it's a very big decision for parents to make, especially if the guardian is the parent. I've actually had a little bit easier flexibility with public guardians, just because I think they're not as emotionally invested in the decisions that that person's going to make. They feel like if that health and safety is covered in other ways, then that's probably okay. Whereas a parent is like, every decision is a huge decision, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I think that even with caring guardians, even with loving parents who have the best intentions, it takes a lot of advocacy on that person's behalf, helping them really look at, I usually consult with the whole family, and then I consult with just the guardians, and then I consult with just the individual, and then kind of moderate between those conversations. One family was like, he doesn't want to take his meds, and we're afraid that if we gave him guardianship, he wouldn't take his meds. So I go back and consult with the individual, and he's like, those meds make me feel crazy. I don't want to take those meds. It's not that I don't want to take meds. It's just that that particular medicine makes me feel really wacky. So we go back, and it's a lot of conversations trying to look at the guardian's concerns, address them as they come up, and a slow process of helping them see that, this is something that could really work. This is something that gives you the ability to support them, but also allows them to be their own individual person, which I think most caring guardians, that's what they want for their kid or the person that they're supporting.
And Stephanie Tanner has her hand raised.
I am the parent of 7 people with developmental disabilities through adoption. And unbeknownst, I know Sarah really well. And unbeknownst to myself, we've been doing this style. One of the son that I first adopted actually started taking part in his IEP meetings in the 3rd grade. And he dictated when he stopped therapies. He went through dating someone for 3 years, a very difficult breakup. And these are things that, and I actually took guardianship of him because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. But since then, I have not taken guardianship of my other children. And one thing I would like to offer to you, Lindsey, is that if you would like to use me as a parent that's gone through this, you can. I can give you my number because it is through fear. It is, what if this happens? A funny story, when my son that I'm talking about turned 21, I was like, okay, here we go. He's of legal age. What am I going to do? I have to give him his rite of passage, but he takes meds. What am I going to do? And so I sat down and I had the conversation with him, and he was like, what? I don't want alcohol. I just want a virgin daiquiri. And here I was worrying and was going to, in my mind, put this limit on him, and he never wanted it in the first place. So, it's letting them be their own person.
Absolutely. And, people learn from their mistakes very well. I know that, I recently had a situation where, and this is like very minimal, but this kiddo that we support, he had went to the pond and got a whole bunch of fish. He caught them by hand and was keeping them in a 5-gallon bucket. And he also caught like 10 crawdads. So they're all just like piled in this bucket. He's like, these are my new pets. I'm going to keep them forever. And my like animal loving heart, I swear, was just like, oh, I need those fish to go back in the pond. Like, this is stressing me out. They're all pinching each other and like eating each other's heads. And I'm just like stressed out. And I'm trying to convince him that he needs to put them back. And he's like, no, like, you can't tell me what to do. And I'm like, I'm not trying to. I think that this is great. You want to have these pets, but what's the right thing to do? He's like, it's to keep them. And I'm like, okay, you know what? It is. That's your choice. You can keep them. The next day he called me and he's like, Miss Lindsey, oh my gosh, I am never catching crawfish again. They all killed each other last night. They're all dead. And I'm just like, okay, what did you learn from that? And he's like, well, crawfish are meant to stay in the pond. They're not meant to be my pet. I can just go play with them down there. And I'm like, okay, that was the lesson I wanted you to learn yesterday. but you were not going to learn that lesson until you learned it for yourself. So it was just a gentle reminder that sometimes the decisions that we want people to make and we feel like, oh my gosh, this is a huge thing, it's really not. And that person will learn from it and come out of it with a new perspective. And you allowed them to make that decision and not control that. So
Miss Tiny Shy also has her hand raised.
So when you work with parents who are like Miss Tanner and they seek guardianship or they make plans to seek guardianship over their students who may be graduating high school because they think it's the right thing to do you all serve as advocates or maybe a resource to be able to communicate with the parents and just talk to them about alternatives? And although the state doesn't recognize this supported decision making, do you all serve as maybe supports to them and say, hey, you know, guardianship may be great, but that also may not be the path that you need to take for your young adult at this time. But here's what's happening in other states, and maybe you can sit with your kid and talk about, you know, allowing me as your parent to help you make decisions as you enter the real world.
yeah, absolutely. Several of the referrals that I've gotten to help families with supported decision-making contracts have come from our vocational department, who are kiddos who are getting services, and their parents are looking at that decision. Right now, I've kind of become the consultant around supported decision-making at ASN, but I really hope to have some people in the voc department who can really act as that consultant in the moment, because I think I work specifically with supported living, and so people who are over 18. So a lot of the people who I work with already have a public guardian or a guardianship in place. But I have had a couple different referrals come out of the vocational department. So hopefully, you know, I have a lot of goals around creating some good curriculum, creating some good assessments for us to use. And so hopefully we'll be able to push that out to multiple departments to where it's more accessible. I think right now it's more of a parent will say something in conversation with maybe Miranda or Laramie or someone in that department, and then they'll reach out to me and ask for me to step in and help out. So.
Okay, thank you.
It looked like Topher had something to say as well.
I just wanted, like, if you're disabled, like people most of the time think you're handicapped, and sometimes you are handicapped. I just wish we could get rid of that stigma, because then if they didn't think that the people were handicapped instead of disabled, you know what I mean? Those words are two different words and they have two different connotations to it. Like, I don't know. I was just throwing that out there. Like, it's crazy how, you know, guardian versus SDT or whatever, like it's two different things, but it's just somebody taking care of somebody. But if they knew more about the person and their disabilities, you know what I mean, and not automatically assume that they're handicapped and not able to do anything, like make decisions for themselves. Like as somebody disabled, I don't like how automatically like I can't make decisions when I can make pretty good decisions sometimes. I'm
Absolutely.
sorry. I shouldn't. But y'all
Well,
understand what I was saying.
a lot of times I look at situations as, is it the person with the disability or is it the environment with the disability, right? Because our world was built by people for people without disabilities. And so if this world was made by people with disabilities, it would function better for people with disabilities. And so oftentimes if you look at the environment around someone, you can see that this person would have tons more abilities if we just structured the environment a little bit differently around them.
Like, I'm just gonna say this. I thought I was stupid till I got to my master's degree program because I was told I was stupid, even though I'm the only one going to school. And then I got a 4.0 and I was like, that's not right. Like, and it took me 30. That's why I'm saying when it's not set there, like Miranda said, as a kid, when you get to my age, like it's kind of a brain and you're already thinking all this stuff. Okay, I'll shut up. I'm starting to talk.
Congrats on your master's degree. That's awesome.
Lindsay, in the chat, you have some great discussion. Miss Judy Smith says parent-to-parent networking can definitely add value to parents of kids with disabilities from birth and sometimes throughout adulthood. Encouraging parents to join a parent network groups can serve to provide the support and guidance, connections to resources, and etc. they so desperately need as they walk through the maze of confusion of having a child with a disability, often especially post-high school. And then Kachita says, had a question of how binding is the SDM contract and can the person get out of it when they want?
Yes, the person can get out of it if they want. And like I said, it's a living contract. So if they want to change their supporters, change who supports them in what area, all they have to do is mark it out and sign it, initial it, whatever they'd like to do. And that's pretty much how it gets changed. Very simple.
Any other questions, comments? Like we've done great on time. We're only 10 minutes till 11. So if there's not any questions, did you have your contact information you'd like to share, Lindsay? Wait, we got one more. It says from Miss Carla, it says, it might be a good idea to use the SDM model in our vocational rehab counseling. We can use it as a tool to access for supports. Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely. And I will follow up. I can send them to Miranda. I've got her contact information. And then you guys can put those resources out. Also, if you just Google supported decision making, there's going to be a breadth of information out there from different states and different organizations. So
Should be.
let me pull up my, there we go.
So as you can see on the screen, Ms. Parker's contact information is over on the left-hand side. It is lparker@supports.org. As once we get all the information that you send to Miranda, we'll go ahead and send out to all the individuals who registered for this conference and get that information out there. I very much thank you for this. This was great. You had great conversation, great information being brought to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys' participation, engagement.
This time, if everybody wants to take a 10-minute break, we'll come back at 11 for the business meeting. That way, if anybody needs to use the restroom, they're more than welcome to just take a breather. That was a lot of great information. So thank you, Miss Lindsay. And excited to get all the information that you're going to provide to us afterwards. So.
Thank you, guys.
We'll get started on the business meeting right at 11.